Welcome back, everyone. I hope the break offered you another great opportunity to network and build those connections. We certainly saw plenty of points coming in on that leaderboard. Now, next up on our virtual stage is Nadine Ray, Organising Director at the TSSA, to talk to us about ED&I in the rail industry and the work they're doing to help support the creation of a more inclusive open sector. So I'll hand you over to Nadine.
Hello, can you hear me, see me? Thank you for inviting me here today. It's really a great pleasure to be able to talk about the strategies we have to change in the industry to make it more inclusive of all people and a more attractive place to work, obviously. So I'm going to talk to you today about, in particular, three pieces of our strategy that are really important and help us drive forward a collaborative approach with employers to achieve that change. So next slide, please. Right, well, the first, of course, is around leadership. It's very important that as leaders in the industry, and many of you will be a leader or should consider yourselves to be leaders, that we actually live our values. And if we're looking to see a positive change happen, we have to be part of that change. So you'll see there on the slide there, I have stepped up in our own campaign for LGBT+ people, and become a role model for our campaign alongside some of our members who have done the same. And that's been a really key element, in particular for the strand of work around LGBT+ that our union is leading. To actually break some of the stereotypes of what it is to be LGBT+ and a rail professional, but also to make sure that it's people that are the center and the focus of these discussions. They're not just abstract, but that we are actually talking about real people, real lives, and real lived experiences. And as a leader, reflecting on how important that is, it's certainly enabled the membership of TSSA, which is they come from the workforce in the railway. It's enabled them to take that step also, and to do that in a really positive way, and in conjunction with the agendas of the employers who employ them. So the first step as a leader is always to be a role model. And sure, not everyone has the lived experience to be a role model in every sphere, but then it's important to, as a leader, be an ally and to go on a journey of learning what it means to support and help amplify the voices of those who don't have a strong voice in the workplace. The journey of an ally is a really important one, and as a role, I am a role model, but I'm also an ally to other groups, and it's important that part of my journey as a leader is to listen and understand the lived experiences of people that are different to my own lived experiences, and make sure that that is at the forefront of the work that I do as well. In doing that, in taking those values and in taking those active steps of being a role model or an ally, you're actually sending signals within the workplace that this is the change that we want to see, and that it's okay to be your authentic self at work, and that we welcome you to share your life and your lived experiences. And that enables people to fully contribute in the workplace. And there's plenty of research, including the work that Stonewall does as an organization for LGBT+, for instance, that will show that helps with productivity. So one of the key campaigns we have is Inclusive Rail. It's around making the railway inclusive of LGBT+ people by 2025. And again, as a leader, that's a big, hairy, audacious goal, as you say. But it's important to provide that vision and to actually put the resources of our union organization and to collaborate with other organizations, put the resource behind that big vision, and to not think small. When you're thinking inclusion, we have to think bigger than what we can imagine right now. So in that way, we also have to actively demonstrate what those values are that are going to lead us down that path to success for those big goals and that big vision. That sets the tone for the rest of the organization. So if you're sitting in a leadership position, no matter where you are in the hierarchy, you have an opportunity and a privilege to be able to execute and send that tone in whatever sphere of influence you have. And of course, to encourage those above you to also do the same. Alongside that, of course, the very first bullet point you see there is to have and ensure you have values of kindness and empathy at all levels of that leadership, because some of the issues around equality and diversity will directly challenge people, challenge their beliefs, challenge who they believe they are and how they are perceived by others, and also their ability or people's ability to engage in the workplace. And that's certainly has to be met with some empathy and kindness for the real conversations to be able to be had, and for ears to suddenly open up and listen. There needs to be some empathy, both for those who have the lived experiences and for those who don't understand. So next slide, please. In addition to that leadership, certainly one thing that TSSA we're looking at is establishing our equality bargaining standards. And so these are standards we put together of bronze, silver, and gold. As you can see on the slide there, there's some indications of what that means in each level. But it's really a journey that we're asking employers to take with us. And the commitment to the journey is the key thing here. So quite often when unions engage with employers, we're looking for specific commitments on points, and it can feel like it's an all or nothing scenario. But with our equality bargaining standards, what we're trying to do is reflect that actually diversity, inclusion, and equality, it's a never-ending journey that we have to start somewhere and we have to progress. And no matter where we're at, we can always improve. And so what we're doing with the bargaining standard is putting a stake in the ground and saying, here's where we are, let's move forward, let's see what we can do to improve, and let's do that together. So there's a huge emphasis for us on the collaboration with employers as opposed to the accountability element, which of course there is some, but it is more of about keep holding ourselves to account and working together to make sure that we're creating inclusive workplaces. I think also for us, having a standard has helped us as a union, whereby we have a certain group of members who are our company engagement representatives. They are the workplace representatives that will engage with the company on a variety of issues. And they don't necessarily have the lived experience to be able to confidently promote some of the changes that need to happen, or they might not even understand what changes need to happen to make workplaces more inclusive. So our bargaining standard enables people without lived experience to confidently drive forward a change agenda, which is going to, in effect, make a workplace more inclusive. And again, that's working with people, obviously, with other members who do have lived experiences or whatever variety of things we're bargaining for. We're also using that format and thinking about bargaining. We're using structures that are familiar and change and engagement structures that are already familiar with our members. And that was quite important, that in amongst this, it seemed like the normal business of the union to be engaging on equality issues. So it's important to use those familiar tools in a positive way. So some of the things that we have equality bargaining standards for, part of our Inclusive Rail campaign, we have LGBT plus inclusive workplaces, but we also have developed over time some expertise as an organization in neurodiversity. So we have a bargaining standard for neurodiversity at work, and we are shortly launching our mental health and wellbeing bargaining standard as well. And these are all agendas which we know and are confident with employers actually meet some of the interest base of your equality equality, diversity, and inclusion outcomes and strategies as well. And so in choosing some of those topics for us to, and those streams of work for us to get engaged with, we're thinking through how we can work together with companies rather than set entirely different agendas. So some of the results we have, we're actually about to start our very first audits against our LGBT plus inclusive workplaces bargaining standard. We have Network Rail who have committed to go for gold. And so we start our audit process with them shortly. And we're doing a first audit, pilot audit with Great Western Railway, GWR, and very excited to be working with them very closely on this in a collaborative manner, and looking forward to the results of that. We also have an agreement with ScotRail. So in presenting forward to companies this, our bargaining standards is setting a standard, we're actually enabling a positive engagement. No matter what else is happening with our industrial relations or health and safety matters, we're able to have that positive engagement on equality issues, and we're able to work together towards mutual interests. And I think that quite nicely moves on to the next slide, where we're talking about collaboration. So a third point in terms of our change agenda is to work collaboratively, and we not just with our employers, but we're also looking at partners we can work with that help us all along the journey. So one of the first steps we took in our Inclusive Rail campaign was to become a Stonewall diversity champion as a trade union ourselves. And so in doing that, we are valuing our own journey. And so we do that as an employer with our own staff, and have internal role model posters for that are staff focused. And we also obviously work with Stonewall, who have diversity champions within the rail sector. We work with them to work with our members and to engage with employers on the same agenda. So so that's a very valuable partnership for us, and that spurred us along quite significantly. And I know many employers also are Stonewall diversity champions, but also have relationships with other organizations to help move and drive the agenda forward. Asking for help is a good thing in these areas, and support, and that expertise is a good way of it's a good way of bringing expertise into the organization and having a guiding hand and a friend. So there is, we also last year became a member of Investing in Ethnicity, similarly to look at that for race. And whilst we know, or you may know, that Time to Change no longer exists, but it has been replaced. The pledge has been replaced with another tool of the industry, Mental Health and Wellbeing Charter. We as an organisation, TSSA, we did sign the Time to Change pledge. We were proud to be one of the first unions to do that also. In Stonewall, we were the very first trade union to become a Stonewall diversity champion. So those relationships are entirely important to us, and very important to driving forward an agenda. As I said, bringing in that expertise and that support and that guiding hand to help drive forward that change, and ask and help us facilitate some of the conversations that need to be had, that we don't necessarily have the internal capacity or ability to hold and to do ourselves. In that also, thinking about that collaboration with employers, trade unions are a natural body to be working on collaboratively with on a change program with employers. There are already the structures there. We already have workplace representatives on a variety of issues, and certainly in equality and diversity, while they're not legislated for, we have encouraged and successfully worked with employers to implement equality or inclusion representatives who have a focus of being champions in the workplace, but also having that trade union representative role on top of that. So that's been very invaluable piece of the change agenda for us. But those structures, as I said, with the equality bargaining standards, the structures are already in there and in place with that employee engagement. And so whilst there are obviously things that we need to do in addition, because we wouldn't have an issue of requiring change if everything was working perfectly, actually working closely with the trade unions gives the opportunity to reach people from a different perspective. And so that is why, as a trade union, we work on equality and diversity quite collaboratively with employers. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about how these strategies for us of having values and throughout all of our levels of leadership, being role models and allies, the standards of inclusion and the collaboration has worked for us. We've found that over the past 5 years, well, certainly our LGBT plus network has grown from around 5 people to almost 100 people. We've also have launched an equality survey, which we did about 7 years ago in the rail sector, and we've just concluded one now, which we're going to analyze with our academic partners. But some key results already is that we're finding that in terms of the decision to join a trade union, for instance, 33% of people are saying that because of our equality and diversity agenda, that is part of the decision making for joining our organization. And in terms of retaining membership in our organization, 50% of people are indicating that's an important piece of their decision. And so it's proving the worth for us as a trade union. But that also translates potentially into the decision making of joining an organization as an employee. Those signals that you send out, the tone that you set in terms of equality and diversity is really important, and it is factoring into people's decisions as to where they want to work and where they see themselves in the future. So it's also increased our member engagement, and in terms of we have people stepping forward to become equality reps and to get involved in pieces of work, in particular around our neurodiversity agenda, our mental health and well-being agenda. These are all things that people are wanting to engage in, and they're finding that vehicle through the work that we're doing. And having that collaboration with our employers has actually helped some people decide that they do want to step up and get involved in that. We also we launched part of our Inclusive Rail campaign with a #No Bystanders pledge, and we had over 1,000 people sign that in the first couple of years. And that to us was significant because it represented 1,000 conversations. This was a manual pledge that we did. We decided specifically not to do that online. So that's 1,000 conversations that were had about becoming an ally or a role model, and standing up to tackle discrimination where we see it in the workplace. So those are some of the really positive results we have, and I'm really pleased that we're seeing over a very short period of time such clear results from the strategies that we've put in place for equality and diversity. More than happy to speak to anyone about these strategies, and I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Nadine, that was really good. Thank you. You have set us up perfectly for our final leaders debate of the day, lived experiences. And it's to offer something that's a little bit different, but to complement what ED&I, passenger inclusivity, organizational culture change, and procurement requirements. But it's its most core aspect. ED&I is about one thing. It's about people. So the team at RTM, with support from those involved with RIA and Women in Rail's EDI Charter, are delivering a discussion all about the experience of people across our industry in relation to ED&I and the directions which they want to see us take our industry. So please join me in welcoming to our virtual stage Thevani Ravindran, Assistant Civil Engineer at Atkins, Natalie Leister, Area Manager for Southeastern Railway, and Mohanad Ismail, Principal Consultant at WSP. Now, alongside their individual roles within the industry, Thevani, Natalie, and Mohanad are also members of the EDI Charter Working Group. So it's set to be an insightful panel discussion. So do take advantage, like you've been doing throughout the day, of the live Q&A function to pose any questions you have during the discussion. I'll be keeping an eye out on the right-hand side of my screen, and so will the team backstage. So we'll put as many questions as we can to our panel. But welcome to all of you. This panel is about lived experiences. So I thought it might be really nice to start the panel to hear a little bit more about you. And if we can start with Mohanad and talking about your experience and how diversity has played a role in your life and its impact on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, hi everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here today. But yeah, I mean, getting straight into it, I think for me, diversity played a big role in making me the person who I am. It creates it enables me to see different perspectives, and the beauty of diversity is that you can see the world in so many different shades of colors or different views, and that's the reality. Is that my view of the world is my view of the world. Your view of the world is your view of the world, and we have 4 different people on the screen right now, and we all see the world completely different. And the beauty of diversity is that if you allow yourself to just see the world from someone else's perspective, it enables you to make informed decisions about your life. It makes you see much more than what you will see if you were just to rely on your own understanding. So I think throughout my life, diversity was all about that. And my personal life, I grew up in different parts of the world. So I've been exposed to a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, beliefs, ethnicities, you name it, the whole shebang. and because of that, it really kind of cemented my belief in diversity is the way forward. And in a globalized world, it is something that we really need to take seriously and embrace.
I absolutely do. You're right there. Natalie, give us a flavour of the story behind you starting Women in Rail Empowerment back in, I think it was December, wasn't it, 2018?
Yeah, so it was something that we recognised within Southeastern, that people from minority groups within our business were feeling that they were more engaged but maybe didn't have a voice. So yeah, I got voted in as chair. So since then we've been working towards many different topics for women in rail, but equally when we look at it from a women's perspective, we also see it from everybody's perspective. So we see how it will affect everybody within Southeastern, and then that's grown into various different events such as this, and now the ED&I chart. So yeah, I'm really, really pleased to see how we've managed to evolve Southeastern, but also now about the impact we can have on diversity and inclusion within the rail industry, because it, as Mohanad said, it is so important for us going forward.
And Thevani, you're an assistant engineer for Atkins and the business engagement leader for Atkins Embrace Network, which is the ethnic minority network. I'd love you to just give us a flavour about Embrace and the live race and discrimination discussion that you organised after the dreadful murder of George Floyd.
So it came about because last year everyone, like the world was literally up in flames. Like everyone was talking about it with their families and their friends, and then kind of coming to work and just kind of carrying on as normal and just feeling like just not discussing it. And then there was a bunch of us in the committee and we were just talking amongst ourselves saying that, like, we're not talking about this in work. Why are we not talking about this in work? And realized race isn't discussed at all in the workplace, and realized like why it's like such an important part of so many people's lives, especially last year. So we decided to hold this race and discrimination panel, and it was attended by so many different people, and it got such good traction. And some people had been working in the company for like 30 plus years and had been saying, wow, like a conversation like that hasn't ever happened in the company. Thanks for bringing it about. And it's really got the ball rolling, and conversations have continued to happen. And we've really kind of broken down barriers with talking about race and discrimination at work, and it's been really, really good.
That's fantastic to hear. I don't normally go to questions early on, but I'm going to, because Graham's got a question from Mohanad that seems quite appropriate. Graham wants to know how you see the WR ED&I Charter changing culture in the industry and influencing change over the coming years.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I said this before to colleague. I think it starts with commitment, right? And it starts with commitment, and it starts with accountability. The ED&I charter in its own right, it's getting the rail industry to commit and to be held accountable, and to give actually some sort of direction, where those who don't have a voice, if they can, if they can't raise their voice, they know exactly where to go to, right? And I think that's the initial part of it, right? And then with the encouragement of that, and the people who are driving this charter forward, the amazing people within the group, the diverse set of backgrounds, and their drive and their passion, as well as those who will come after. I personally feel that will have that natural evolution. But it does all start with where it gives the people those a target to look at, where it says, you know what, I'm trying to raise my voice here, but you're not listening and you're not hearing me, right? You committed to this, right? I'm accountable. So, and I think that's where it all starts from.
Natalie, I thought it was really important when we were interesting rather when we were talking to listening to Nadine a short while ago, where she was talking about the value of sharing lived experiences, but also commented that she felt that sharing of lived experience helps productivity. Do you find that at Southeastern?
Absolutely, yeah. I think we've made from the work we've done on some really kind of taboo subjects, so to speak, so we've already touched on the fact that people don't talk about the things that are relevant to them, and actually bringing your true self to work makes such a difference to how you perform. And let's face it, we may try to segregate our work from our life, but the reality is we are human, and those merge, and sometimes that kind of filters into your work, into home. And actually, by investing in people and their real problems, we will get a better productivity from everybody, and everyone will feel happy and included. And we've seen that with things like the menopause policy and awareness within Southeastern. It's raised other subjects that people just weren't talking about before. And I've had people come to me and say, I took the information home and I spoke about it with my wife. We've now run colleague sessions on the menopause, where we've said, bring along your family along to this internet event where they can gain more knowledge. Because if your partner or your sister or your daughter or somebody else is struggling, then you're there to support them, and that what may well be on your mind at work. Actually, we've seen people feel very differently about subjects that they just wouldn't. And I feel like they have invested in us as a company for talking about it.
I think the other thing, Thevani, that struck me about Nadine's speech is, talking about living your values and talking about the empathy and kindness that it's important to show to people who have lived experiences. Have you got any examples that you can share with us on that front, how that kindness and empathy has helped people around you feel more included?
Oh yeah, exactly. Like when I grew up in London, so it was very multicultural, but I went to a uni that wasn't massively diverse, especially in engineering. I was the only South Asian person, and engineering, we had the course was made up of 10% women. Throughout my course, I was kind of told, oh, you'll be fine getting a job because you're brown and you're a woman, and companies will have to fill quotas. And kind of in my head, I was like, is that, yeah, I suppose that's a good thing. Is it? Don't really know. But then when I came into the industry, I felt like I hadn't really earned my job, and I was just kind of there to fill a quota, and that really stuck with me. But then when I started talking to people about it, when we started opening up the conversation about ED&I, it was clear that other people were feeling the same thing, and together we worked on it. We talked through it, and we've all kind of got ourselves to a position where it's not really a problem anymore, and we're kind of passing that forward onto people who are, and kind of mentoring people and stuff like that. And so it does really, really help.
I hate that box ticking, and that I don't know. I just think that's just sad to me that that's still going on. But what that sort of reminded me of is perhaps the importance of role models. And Natalie, I think you believe, don't you, that role models are very important, and how can they help?
Well, for me, a role model is, I think that the railing about Thomas the Tank and the kind of the male version of that. One of my past directors, Ellie Burrows, done a really good article on that, about how we perceive the railway, and women, BAME colleagues, LBGT plus, you know, we all play a part as role models to other people coming into the industry. And the amount of people that have said to me, oh, you're an area manager on the railway, like, you know, what do you do there then, you know? And many times actually during my career I have been thought to be the note taker or whatever, and I, you know, I believe that role models play such an important part, because it gives people a different perception of the railway. And actually we have brilliant women within the railway, we have brilliant BAME colleagues. Why would we not have role models that you can aspire to? And also that we've got to represent the communities we serve. And actually, you know, we have a brilliant nation of so many different people we should be representing, and those role models play a part because they mentor, they coach, to give advice. And I think that if people see different people in senior roles or different roles in the business, even engineering, we've touched on that already, how many engineers or train drivers, if you see a role model, you see a female or a BAME colleague at the front of a train pulling into a station, what a difference to a child, to a teenager who may be thinking of the rail industry as one size, that's it, that's what I need to be able to fit in there. Makes such a difference. So I'm really passionate about getting the right people in the role, and then obviously being, you've got an importance within that role to share your experience and to give people confidence in applying.
Mohanad, do you agree with all that and have some other comments to add?
No, absolutely. I think, as I said earlier on, our maps of the world are defined by what we see. And I think that's super important. To give you an example, first time I got on a train, I think was in my early 20s. And as I said before, all I knew about trains was Thomas the Tank. You know, that was my childhood. So, you know, you don't even need to go far. I'm right here living your example. But absolutely, as a child, growing up in predominantly, growing up in Ireland, trains were not the biggest thing out there, especially living in rural Ireland. You know, so all you see is Thomas the Tank. All you see is in the cartoon characters. You see people all looking the same. You know, Bobby Builder. All of these things portray one image, and then as you grow, that's the image that sticks in your mind. And it's only when I grew up and only when I got involved in the rail industry by accident that I started to see actually there's much more onto this, right? But it actually took me, it took chance, right, to actually take me into the rail industry and actually to see that actually there's much more than what was represented, you know, in those cartoons, or much more was much more than meets the eye. So absolutely, I completely agree with the fact that, you know what, having those different members of our community being represented in different roles, giving the individuals, giving those younger kids the opportunity to actually see what they can potentially be, and not limit their futures and not limit their ambitions just because, you know what, the person that looks like me is in this kind of role, so it means that I can only go to this kind of role, right? Because believe it or not, trying to go into a role that there's not a lot of representation of you is hard work. And on top of that, it's quite discouraging if you don't have the right mentality, right? So straight away, you're just gonna eliminate a large number of the population. So the importance is huge, and I completely agree with that.
Let's take a question for you, Thevani, which has come in from Daniel. Daniel says, Thevani, you said your group discussions were very valuable. Did you get any negativity? Was there any fallout amongst staff? And did you put any control measures in place before starting those discussions?
So we had anonymous questions submitted for the panel beforehand, and it was just like free for all. So we had we screened through the questions beforehand before we asked them to the panel. So that was kind of a measure. But during the discussion, there was no negativity. Everyone was so happy to share their own experiences. They were commenting on the panel, sharing their experiences, and it was all so positive. Which I don't know if I'm surprised about or I'm not surprised about, but it was like brilliant, like to realize that this was having a positive reaction and there was no negative kind of repercussions. And going forward, like the whole company kind of wanted to learn more, wanted to have all these discussions in amongst all their like teams and practices. So yeah, we only had positive responses from it, which was brilliant.
That's good to hear. Natalie, Lucy says, touching on the childhood perspective of the rail environment, such as Thomas the Tank Engine, which I was told earlier, my children are a bit more grown up now, I was told earlier, has started to represent, not just the boys I grew up. How do you think the industry is changing this narrative, and how can we change and alter perception from an early age? Because I mean, there's so many opportunities, aren't there, in the rail industry for everybody?
Yeah, I think so. We've done a huge amount with different schools, county councils, where we, have spoken at schools or events. Great opportunity this year with the Kent County Council in terms of going out via this sort of to talk to schools about our experiences. So I think from a wire perspective, our Women in Rail Empowerment Group, we've done a lot to focus on shared experiences. So I see myself, and I'm sure the other people within the ED&I group see ourselves as advocates for the rail industry. So where there is an opportunity, I rarely turn that down to share how we could influence the younger generation. We do need to get better at that. I think we need to get into kind of primary schools, and we need to be starting earlier, actually, to be starting to change people's perceptions. One idea that we're working with at the moment is that secondary school children are hopefully going to work with us to interview different characters on the railway, and then that's going to be transferred into a book, and they're going to go and read it to primary school children. So that kind of incorporates that somebody a little bit older is influencing them in their decision. I think there's a long way to go. I think that TV, social media plays a massive part in influencing the next generation, but just being able to employ and share our experiences with actual colleagues on the railway will make a big difference as well. That if you turn up at a station or you turn up on a train and you see someone that looks like you, as Mohammed already said, actually that changes your perception in a subconscious way. And that to me is the longevity, is the subconscious bit, that it's already there. It's already, the perception's already there.
Mohanad, we're relying more on technology now, aren't we? I mean, not just in the rail industry, but as a society and, on a personal basis. I always get horrified when that little number comes up, which tells you that you spent about 12 hours on social media. Are we in danger in any way of a split society, which, only gives those the sort of best deals and priorities for those lucky enough to be able to have or afford the equipment? How can we make sure that as we turn into a much more digital society, we include everybody and we don't make it exclusive in any way?
That's a very good question. I think one of the first things that I would say is technology in its own right is a tool, and it needs to be looked at as a tool. One of the issues that we have is that when we see technology as part of our life, that it drives our life. So what I would say is that yes, there is a slight concern, but as I always say, that everything starts at the home. Everything is about education, right? Everything is about understanding why you're using technology, right, and how you're using technology, right? So I'll give you a simple example. In my household, we had dinner time. Dinner time was a time where all the phones get taken away and put in a basket somewhere, right? Why? Because it is not a part of you. The technology is not a part of you. It is a tool that helps you in achieving a certain task or a certain function, right? Map that into your mind, understand that, and use it when you need to, right? Once we have that and kind of instilled in our brains, then it just becomes, you know what? You get to use your brain actually, instead of letting it follow, right? Instead of just following the trends, instead of letting the technology kind of, or the social media or the whatever it might be, drive you and create this kind of split view or split vision. So I think there is a way to mitigate it, and it's just about understanding and being able to educate. And I think that's already happening. I mean, I know part of when I used to go, I was in my first years with the younger professionals, all the time we used to go into schools, and I used to see a lot of these kids using technology, right? Kind of made me feel a bit old, because when I was in school, I was using a blackboard and chalk. So, you can see the kind of the difference. But nonetheless, I could already see that there is a shift where kids and these younger generations are being taught how to use it. But I think we must not be complacent and not to kind of lift our foot off the gas, I guess.
For you, Thevani, from Tina. Tina says, as part of my role, I create case studies on specific roles across our business, and we always try to highlight ED&I. Do you have any advice on how we can approach those who can help promote the industry to minorities without it feeling like it's just because of their religion, race, gender, age, etc., when it is in fact because of how good they are at their role? Oh, we haven't got your microphone, I don't think, Thevani. I think I've lost Thevani there. Mohanad, do you want to pick up? Because I'm not hearing Thevani.
So I've lost you for a little bit. Do you mind repeating the question again?
Oh, do you know, the question's actually disappeared now. It was from Tina, who wanted... Tina, oh, I don't know where Thevani's gone now. It was from Tina, who wanted to know, oh, here it is. She says, as part of her role, she creates case studies on specific roles across her business. We always try to highlight ED&I. Do you have any advice on how we can approach those who can help promote the industry to minorities without it feel like it's just because of their religion, race, gender, age, when in fact it's because of how good they are at their role? So she's looking for some advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say look for the common grounds, right? Look for what's interesting, right? You need to know the community, right? Right? Different people have different traditions, different cultures, right? But bottom line, if you want to interact or engage with somebody, you find that common ground, what that interests, right? And then we don't necessarily need to paint the rail industry as, you need to come here because of you're a minority, but actually no, you're interested in this kind of stuff. We know your hobbies, or we know what you like. Actually, believe it or not, we have that, right? And I think that's the level that you need to come at it from. But in order for you to do that, one needs to actually be embedded within the minorities, be part of the communities, right? Because you can't assume that this person, Mr. X or Miss Y, like what you like, or experience what you experience. So there is an activity there, is understanding them, understand the interests, and then actually reflecting back in the industry and seeing if it is there. If it is there, just map it.
You make it sound so simple, and actually it is, Mohanad. Natalie, we've talked a lot today about attracting and retaining a diverse workforce. What's your experience with the hurdles and blockers in the industry?
Well, I think we've kind of already touched on that. Actually, there's a bit of fear about setting people. This conversation is about, nobody is trying to upset or make anyone a minority by talking about all of this. Everybody involved. So I think some of the blockers are people's perception of what we're trying to achieve from ED&I. We're not trying to change what's gone and works. What we're trying to do is change what doesn't work, and actually what we might need to adjust, and that means for everybody. So there are a lot of things for me that are like policies, that unconscious bias is a big thing that actually Mohammed already said, you know, kind of I'm going for, because, or Thevani said about ticking a box. Actually, it's not about that. It's for the job, but we need to make sure that our facilities are right for people. That's a big blocker. If you're going to get a lot of women join the railway, but then you don't have the facilities for them or the policies for them, then you're not going to retain them because they're not going to feel engaged. And I think those two paired up are the things for me that people are so fearful of getting things wrong. We need to talk. We just need to say, we just need to talk and ask a question. I don't mean to offend you, but I want to ask this because I don't know and I don't understand. No one would get offended by that. And if they are, then we should be saying, I'm really sorry, but that actually offended me. Most people don't mean to offend each other, do they? They may say something accidentally and actually maybe they just don't know. So yeah, blockers for me is we just need to talk, and we need to look at those fundamental basic summary.
Thevani, it's good to get you back there. We lost you for a moment, but talking is so important. And I don't know, just looking at you, I think you'd probably be a very good talker. And is that key to what you do in your organisation?
Yeah, we do so much at Atkins. Like you mentioned earlier, the race and discrimination panel. But we're doing so much more in the sense of we're holding like these BAME roundtables, where we're like asking people to come and share their stories. It's a confidential space where you can share your lived experience, and then using this to drive for a positive change in the workplace through like tangible actions and taking everyone accountable, essentially. We also have so many other initiatives going. We're creating like an ally, how to be an ally document as well. And just trying to make everything that we do as inclusive as possible and trying to get everyone involved as much as possible as well.
So to end on, Mohanad, no pressure here. The $1 million question for you. How optimistic are you feeling about the future, that the rail industry will welcome all, be diverse, inclusive, champion equality, be a positive place to work, and be a fantastic asset for all customers to use? Big question.
Well, you're asking an optimistic person, so obviously the answer is going to be optimistic. I am optimistic, but I'm also, at the same time, I am a realist. There is a lot of work that needs to be done, right? But there is a lot of self-reflection needs to take place. People need to reflect within themselves. People need to understand that actually, as I said earlier on, our maps of the world is different, and be okay with recognizing different maps of the world. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done by the industry, the individuals within the industry, right? And the talking that was mentioned earlier on, all of that does need to take place. But I'm quite optimistic because, as you said earlier on, there's a new generation coming in, right? This new generation is more globalized generation. It's the generation of the internet. It's the generation of, you know what, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, and they're going to be the leaders of tomorrow, right? And for me, that is the most important thing. So the optimism comes from that. But I recognize at the moment, we still need to create the space for that to come in. Otherwise, they're going to come in here full on, but we're just going to keep them down. So, and that's where the work needs to take place.
With you guys leading the charge in your 3 organizations, I too am very optimistic about the future. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you all. Thank you very much to Thevani, Natalie and Mohanad for offering such great input and for sharing their personal experiences with us. It's been really great to have them with us. And with that, we draw to a close on what I hope you'll agree has been a truly inspirational and fascinating RTM365 event, tackling every aspect of space within the rail industry. All the content from today will be available to view on demand at your leisure within the next 24 to 48 hours, and our networking tools remain open year-round. We're building a community on the RTM365 platform with new faces joining all the time. So jump back in whenever you're free and continue these conversations. Together, we really can make meaningful change. These journeys often begin, as you know, with a simple conversation. The RTM team will be in touch with our winners from today's gamification system to discuss the prize options. And well done if you've ended up in the top 3. The first, second, and third place point winners can choose either Amazon vouchers, a charity donation, or the planting of an equivalent number of trees. And today's event, as I mentioned at the beginning, is a CPD certified event with 1 CPD point on offer per hour of content consumed. So we'll ensure that the CPD certificates for attendance are distributed post-event, guaranteeing recognition for the learning consumed for those who work to CPD targets. I'd just like to acknowledge the incredible work which has been done behind the scenes by the team at Rail Technology magazine, both today and in the run-up to this event. They've put on such a great show with brilliant guests and panelists, so I'd like to say well done to all of them. And from me and everyone involved with RTM365, thank you for attending. I do hope to see many of you again, and perhaps some of your colleagues at our next RTM365 event, which will be focused on passenger experience, and that takes place on August the 18th. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much for having me as your host, and I'll see you again. Thank you.